Hello, curling fans, and welcome back to the Broom Brothers. Happy New Year! It is the first 2025 edition of the show. It is me, once again, John Cullen, thrilled to be joined by my better half, my more attractive half, and unfortunately, another year in which the two of us will get older. It's Robbie Doherty.
Oh, don't say the O word, John. I'm feeling old after the holidays, my friend. Too many sweets. Too much junk food. We'll just leave it at that. Not
This is the
beer.
year. This is the calendar year in which I turn 40. So I feel like I'm starting to feel it. You know.
Oh, listen, you don't look 40.
Well,
I wouldn't
thank
give you 40. You're welcome.
Thank you. That's nice of you to say.
I was gonna say 42 or 43, but
hey, that's fair. I'm wearing these miles. I'm wearing these miles on my face. You know. Yeah. Did you have a good holiday, Robbie?
I had a great holiday, and you know what? It was busy with a 2-year-old who has a birthday 2 days before Christmas. Right. So yeah, it was. I wouldn't say it was relaxing, but it was great. It's great to kick back. Didn't get to the curling club once, which was kind of unfortunate, but kind of nice to recharge the battery and kick 2025 off with a bang. So looking forward to getting to Guelph. How about yourself, my friend?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah. Went back to Vancouver, saw the family a little bit, spent some time watching some mixed doubles. That was really the only curling thing that I did was that. But yeah, it was good. It was really low key, honestly. Wife and I didn't even go out for New Year's Eve. Just stayed in and coasted. And
I was snoring at 10:30. It's the greatest New Year's ever.
I guess it's a little different when you have a kid. There's more to manage, and also a built-in excuse. I don't really have a good excuse. We just didn't go out.
Yeah. Hey, nothing wrong with that. Nothing. The mixed doubles was on. By the way, it was great having some curling to watch over the break. I don't know what the players thought. I'm not trying to say right or wrong here, but I loved the timing of that event. Like selfishly. Yeah. Like
NBA and NFL are doing Christmas Day games. Let's move it up. Let's get it over Christmas. I want to be watching curling on Christmas Day with my family.
Same. I was tempted to head over to Liverpool to check it out.
Right. Yeah. Not too far from you.
No, but didn't quite test that one with my wife, after just 3 slams and just getting home from Newfoundland and so. So I didn't make it to Liverpool. I wanted to. Looked like a great event. Looked like the community was behind it.
Yeah, and, totally.
Some good curling, that's for sure.
Yeah, we'll get to the mixed doubles in a second, but some more pressing news off the top of the show. Some startling news in the curling world as Karlee Burgess announces her departure from Team Carey and has joined forces with Team Einarson. We learned that Shannon Burchard will be out for the remainder of the season with that nagging knee injury that's been bugging her all year. And we will talk to Karlee later in the show. She very graciously joined us, so we'll learn all about the move and the reasons behind it and everything coming up. But Robbie, I'll throw it to you first. Obviously, I think this move was a bit of a stunner for the curling world, as Team Carey had the wild card spot at the Scotties this year. They had a spot in next year's trials. They lose both of those because they had already lost Jennifer Jones, and now by virtue of losing Karlee Burgess, they don't have the requisite 3 of 4 players to keep those spots. So we'll go to you first. What were your first impressions of this move? How are you feeling about it? Obviously, we thought with the BJ Neufeld thing, maybe we were done for the season, but another one thrown in the spokes here.
Yeah, you know what? I think it's a great pickup for Team Einarson. It's unfortunate the circumstances that they are in as a team, having to pick up new players all the time. We've seen them with different lineups throughout the season. Hopefully Shannon is recovering well and her knee is coming along. And it's unfortunate with the Brienne situation. I think a lot of curlers are behind her and supporting her in that journey. I know that I certainly am. So hopefully that gets cleared up. But with the Karlee situation, Karlee's from Truro. I'm from Charlottetown. So, that's 2 hours, which is a big drive, but in theory, it's not very far. So I've seen Karlee since she was a young kid playing. And I've said this, it's going to sound cliche, but I've said this for years. There's not many people who love the game of curling more than Karlee Burgess and the Burgess family, to be honest. We've seen them around. They're a great family, but Karlee is just one of those athletes that don't come along very often. You saw it in her when she was young. She works hard. She's really, really, really good. So I'm happy to see her land on Team Einarson. I think she'll bring a lot to that team. She's a great hitter. She's a great sweeper, great endurance, like very, very fit. I just think she'll make that team a lot better in the meantime that they're struggling with all these lineup issues. So I'm happy for her to see her, have a pretty legitimate chance at wearing the maple leaf in Italy. Obviously they'll have to go through Team Homan, which is certainly not an easy task these days.
No.
But I do think that team had to make something happen to put themselves, another level up. And I think in my mind, Karlee was the one. I was sitting on the bench in St. John's talking to a few people, and we were just talking about that team and players. And I said that Karlee Burgess, she's one of the players that will get picked up to that next kind of tier of a team. And I think too, looking back when they agreed to play with Jennifer Jones for this quadrennial, they had to have it in their mind that it might not last 4 years, probably wouldn't last 4 years. So I think they were aware that something like this could happen. It's very unfortunate the way that it played out for them. My heart really goes out. It's no secret, John. I think if there was maybe there is, but if there was a Lauren Lenentine fan club, I think you and I would be 1A and 1B for the, the best. Lauren obviously grew up, 10 minutes away from me, and I've seen the work firsthand that she puts into the game and how much she loves it and how good she is and how much she's grown as an athlete throughout the years. So I selfishly kind of felt bad for her. And of course, Chelsea is an amazing player. She won 2 Scotties. She's certainly no slouch. So, it's unfortunate for them, but at the end of the day, curling's a business in 2025, and you got to give yourself the best chance to do it and to get there, get where you want to go to accomplish your goals and dreams. And I think Karlee made the right move in doing that. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's tough. It's like, it's one of those things where I was kind of looking at it as a like two things can be true situation where I think, I completely agree with you. I was watching Team Einarson and Swift Current because, we knew that Shannon was going to try coming back for that. And it was not only notable that she missed their last game, or what ended up being their last game of the triple knockout against Team Laws, but also just even watching the game she was playing, I could tell like throwing didn't seem to bug her too much, but when she was like going up and down the ice, there was a noticeable like hitch in her step, kind of, that like it was bothering her. And I just thought to myself, you never want to speculate on injuries, but just like watching that at the time, I thought to myself, I'm like, I wonder if this is it for her this season, And so when that happened, you start to cycle the things through your head. We know we had Joanne Courtney on this show. We know that she wasn't interested in playing more than one slam. I talked to Dawn McEwen, who they won the slam with in your hometown in Charlottetown there. And I know that for Dawn, it was the same thing. The curlers, the top women's curlers who are on the bench right now are on the bench because they want to be on the bench.
Of course.
Right.
Yeah.
And so if you're Carey, you're looking around, like you said, the Brienne situation, who knows when that's going to get resolved. And you're probably thinking to yourself, Karlee is a great option. And also maybe we can get her because the results for Team Carey this year have been, probably not where they wanted them to be. They were a little bit inconsistent, seemed like they were still trying to figure things out as a group. So I agree with you. The first thing that's true is that this is the best move for Team Einarson. I think Karlee is the best player that may have been in theory available. And obviously we know that she was available and left, but also a great move for Karlee. I think one thing that's become fairly evident, at least this season, is Homan has separated herself from the pack of everybody in the world, but then Einarson has separated herself from the pack below her. Caitlin Laws, Kayla Skurlik, Kate Cameron, Danielle Inglis, like these are all teams that are in that kind of mix. But to me, Einarson is a clear step above them. So, and Team Carey would be in that group of teams as well. So to me, I understand. I do think it's a good move for Karlee. The other thing that's true is that this is the most cutthroat move we've ever seen in curling history, I think.
Yeah, it's got to be up there.
It's like, it's, you know, so that part of it is, you're like, holy smokes, you know, because it was funny. I had, when BJ, you know, was cut from Team Dunstone, I had a top curler reach out to me and say that was the nastiest cut they think they'd ever seen, because, you know, Team Dunstone already had the wild card spot to the Brier. And I didn't even think about it this way, but the curler was like, well, and, you know, BJ probably would have had flights booked for his family and like hotels. And, you know, like, you're thinking, well, I'm going to be at the Brier for sure. So yeah, take some time off work, book tickets, whatever, you know? And so to think in that context, the same curler, when the Karlee move came out, was like, okay, I was wrong. The BJ cut wasn't the nastiest cut ever. You know, because essentially Karlee kind of cut like all three of her teammates from being able to participate in those events. And so, you know, on the one hand, yes, I agree with you. I think curling is becoming more of a business in 2025. And I think ultimately, on some level, you do have to do what's best for yourself. But it was also the type of decision where you wonder if this becomes a bit more of a precedent setter, that people, you know, once one person shows you it's possible, you know, maybe it sets a trend. And I don't know if it's a trend that's necessarily good for curling, but I do wonder if this kind of opens the door to, you know, a little bit more fluid movement over the course of a quadrennial than we're used to seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've seen on social media the talk of trade deadlines or something along those lines, which I was thinking about it. I was trying to sleep the other night, and somebody on Twitter wouldn't leave it alone. And I was like, dude, finally I just said, okay, I'm going to bed. But you know what? I think that the curling governing bodies are going to have to look at this, because I think you're right. I think this is just the first push, you know, the giant boulder on top of the hill. And once it starts rolling, like we've seen this year, you know, I think when the Gushu move was made, it was kind of like, yeah, well, at least for me anyway, who's been around the game for, I don't know how many years, but you know, my thought was like, oh, there's the big move this year. Didn't see that coming. All right, let's get back to business. And then the next change, and then the next change, and then the next change. So here we are. So, you know, if there's nothing to stop that, who's to say that's not going to become the norm? But I think the writing was on the wall for that team. Like, if you look at the Carey team, and you know, I'm a big fan of Chelsea Carey. I think she's one of the most underrated players I've seen in a long time. Yep. She certainly loves the sport. Yep. You know, and she's not shy about it. You know, her family has a lot of history in the game, and she's had tremendous success, as I said. But you know, like, there was just little things I was watching, and Emily Zacharias, she hadn't been at a slam this year, and I don't know the situation. I'm not here to try and guess or create any gossip, but you know, I don't know how old she is, but early 20s. When I was in my early 20s, you know, I would have walked through fire to get to a Grand Slam event. Yeah. So I don't know what's going on there, but that was the first thing that I kind of saw where, okay, you know, what's the situation of this team? And then their uniforms. There was certainly no giant logos on the front or the back. Yeah. Don't want to try and start gossip about their sponsorship situation, but you know, if that front of the jersey is bare, you know, that's kind of writing on the wall for, you know, perhaps things weren't great in that department either. Again, not trying to speculate, but so I just think that Karlee, you know, when she gets an opportunity like that from Carey, I mean, Carey, like Team Homan right now obviously gets all the attention, and rightfully so. They've dominated for, you know, their second year straight, where they're unbelievable. They're the greatest women's curling team of all time. Let's stop pretending they're not. Like, you know, for those who want to argue, they are. They just are. But Carey won, was it 4 of the last 5 Scotties in 4 in a row? Yeah. Like, that's mind-blowing. Yeah. That is absolutely mind-blowing.
And beat Rachel this year in the final in Charlottetown. So she's like shown she can beat Rachel. And she beat Rachel once last year too. And I know that doesn't sound, ooh, she beat Rachel once, but Rachel only lost 7 times last year. So
and she hasn't lost that much this year.
Yeah, exactly. And 4 of those 7 losses were to Team Gim as well. So like, when you're talking about teams that beat Rachel last year, it was a very, very short list. And then the teams that have beat Rachel this year are Stefania Constantini and Cari Einarson, and that's it. So
yep. Which is mind blowing. So I think, you know, as unfortunate as it is, I would just be willing to guess that things weren't that great in the Carey camp. Karlee saw an opportunity. Yeah. And, you know, it's the year before the trials, the year before the Olympics. You got to do it.
For sure. I mean, there's only so many kicks at the can you get at the Olympics, and I think that's going to shrink more and more too. You know, I think we're seeing, you know, with the commitment that these top teams have to make year in and year out with, you know, traveling to all the slams, playing the WCT events, Scotties, Briars, Worlds, whatever. You know, with the commitment it takes, and from a young age, you know, I think we are going to see more and more people where this is going to have the lifespan of a more regular sport for a lot of people, that, you know, they are going to leave when they're 35 or 40, as opposed to, you know, we see 46-year-old Kevin Martin at the Olympics or whatever in 2010. Like, you know, I think stuff like that is going to become fewer and further between. Obviously you have exceptions. Brad Gushue right now, I believe, is 44. So like, there's always going to be people that will play until the wheels fall off. But I think you're going to see more and more people back out of the game earlier. So you're only going to get so many chances at the Olympics. And I can totally understand, you know, even though you have the trial spot locked up, you're kind of looking around, you're like, well, we really haven't had a great year. You know, we're out of the slams already, you know, so they went from being, I believe, in the top 10 when the year started in Charlottetown to being out of the slams by Guelph. And it, you know, I agree. It's not like, to say that it wasn't working is not, I don't think we're telling tales at a school here. You know, I think that's fair to say. And I just think too, kind of what you alluded to, it's been a lot of upheaval. Like the team has been in sort of a constant state of flux since it started, right? Like, you know, Mackenzie Zacharias left, then Jennifer Jones left, you know, then Emily, had a very limited schedule this year. I had heard it was school and work commitments, like just couldn't get the time off of those things to play. And so, you know, that kind of stuff happens, but it's also, you know, when you're trying to be a top team that's competing with Rachel Homan, you can't have a player miss half of the team's events. Like you just can't,
especially Grand Slams.
Exactly.
It's literally the top 16 in the world there.
Yeah.
You know, you need all your soldiers on the front lines.
100%. So from that perspective too, like again, like I said, I do think it is, you know, it's a cutthroat move. It's a daring move, but I also get it from that sense of the team never felt that settled to begin with. Right. And so, you know, I think that it's not the same thing as if like Emma Miskew were to leave Rachel in the middle of a season. We'd be like, oh my gosh, you guys have been playing together for 20 years. Like that would be truly insane and mind blowing. Like at least in this perspective, you could see why Karlee wanted to make the move. And we're going to hear from her, and I'm sure she'll tell us all about her thought process behind it here in a few minutes. But crazy times in curling, Robbie. It feels like new doors are opening all the time in terms of what is possible in the game.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's just, the sport is just changing. It's wild to see. It's fun to be part of it as well, because, you know, it's been, in my opinion, and I think in a lot of other, say, younger people, it's been pretty stale and pale for a long time. And it's nice to see kind of some things sort of changing up and getting a little bit more competitive and cutthroat. And it also begs the question too, and I'm not trying to open this door because it's been mentioned a few times, but, you know, when you had mentioned school and work commitments, well, look at the international teams. You know, that is their job, or for a lot of them, that's their full-time jobs. They're full-time curlers. Yeah. It begs the question if that's the mandatory way to go, I should say, because Canadian teams obviously trying to juggle that. It's proving not to be easy. But
that's like probably a 4-hour podcast episode that we'll do at a different time. But yes, you're right, for sure. I mean, I think really what it comes down to at the end of the day, for, you know, the moves we're seeing on the men's side and the moves we're seeing on the women's side, it's just everybody's chasing, you know, everybody's chasing. We heard from Team Jacobs when they cut Brendan Botcher that the move was because of Brad Gushue, and, you know, they called it the Gushue effect. He's just that much better than us, and we have to find a way to be as good as him. And, you know, Bruce Mowat, obviously a part of that as well. You know, has won all 3 slams this year, has only lost a single game at a slam. So, you know, he's part of that too, but it's the keeping up with the Joneses. In some case, their last name is literally Jones, but but you know, there is an element of that for sure. And on the women's side, It's keeping up with Rachel Homan, who, that's a team that's as close to professional curlers as we have in Canada.
Yep.
If they have jobs, they're, I know they do have jobs, but it's more of a side project. Curling is the main, that's the main thing. So yeah, no, I think you're right. And speaking of curlers who are dedicating a lot of time to the sport, the mixed doubles Olympic trials just finished up in Liverpool, Nova Scotia. We do know two things, Robbie. We know that Jocelyn Peterman and Brett Gallant will be the Canadian Olympic team if they can finish high enough at the Worlds in Fredericton coming up later this year. Your thoughts on the mixed doubles trials in general, Joss and Brett being the winners? Where are you at with that whole thing?
Well, I'll speak to Jocelyn and Brett first, and the curling part of it. It was a great week. It was fun to watch. There were some great games. There were certainly you could really tell the top teams and the bottom teams, in my opinion.
For sure. Yep.
Mixed doubles is a fun game. They're short. I like that. It's action packed, and it's never over. I think it was the game between Lot versus, I think it was Brett and Jocelyn. And Brett and Jocelyn were up 4 coming home, and there was a burnt rock on Jocelyn's last one. And Colton had a double, or Catriona had a double for the win, and made it, but rolled out, so tied it. So like the thing I love about mixed doubles is it's never over. The game is still going. Anyway, past that, focus on the trials. It was really cool to see Brett and Jocelyn win. I thought they dominated all week. To me, they were the two that worked as a team the best. And naturally, they're married. They have a son, Luke, together.
I think that can go either way. I think sometimes when you're married, it's a detriment to mixed doubles, and sometimes when you're married, it's a positive. But I was going to
let you say that, and my wife was right beside me, so I'm not gonna go too far into that, but you could just see the chemistry that they have. And there was never questions on the ice of what they were trying to do. Their communication was precise and just so well stated and well thought out. And of course their play was unbelievable. Like, I thought Jocelyn throwing the last rock was outstanding. She didn't miss very much, and if she did, it was a good miss, or B, really, really close sort of thing. And just seeing, Brett win that event. Brett's from Charlottetown. I used to literally meet Brett after school twice a week in the junior program, the Charlottetown Curling Club. And, I saw how hard he worked back then. It's embarrassing to say how many years ago that is now, but he was just different from everybody else. He was so much more passionate. He trained so much harder. When we were all out laughing and having fun, he was working hard, and we all knew he was going to go far in the sport. And obviously we already saw him at another Olympic Games already, but just the chance to see him experience that with his wife, and knock on wood, they will get the job done at the Worlds and book their space to the Olympics. But it was special. I thought Brett proved in that week that he's certainly the best weight judger in Canada, if not the world. His sweeping was outstanding. He made some huge shots. To me, it was just total domination. Yeah, I know there was close games. I don't want to say it was dumb, but they were undefeated. Yeah. And in a field like that, in an event like that, with that kind of pressure, it was in my opinion, the best team won that week. You?
Yeah, I think when a team goes undefeated, it's tough to argue that they weren't the best team there this week. Yeah, I was super impressed with them. And I think one thing that's interesting now is we are seeing. Yeah. So anyway, I think what's impressive about Jocelyn and Brett is that they don't play a ton relative to other top mixed doubles teams. We are seeing the advent of some teams that are really focused on mixed doubles. Kirk and Laura obviously being the Kirk Myers and Laura Walker obviously being the prime example of that, who both left pretty successful 4-person curling careers to focus on that. But there's even some teams, in the Canadian kind of top 5, top 10, like Zheng and Petrangelo. They're a young team from Ontario, and they're just strictly focused on mixed doubles. Giannet and Desjardins as well. Like, there's teams that are coming up that are just focused on that. And obviously Jocelyn and Brett, we know, they're Olympians, they're national champions, Briar and Scotty's champions. Like, we know how good they are, and that, doesn't always mean you're going to win in mixed doubles because you're good at 4-person curling. But they do, when they come together for mixed doubles, they find a way to just kind of pick up where they left off. Like, it seems like they don't need a ton of game reps, and obviously they live together. They live just down the road from me here in Chestermere. Like, I'm sure they're out practicing together quite a bit, and that helps, I'm sure. But in terms of the games played, they're not playing as much as some of the other top teams. And so I thought it was really cool to see them come together like that. And another thing that I think is interesting is, I've covered mixed doubles a little bit. I worked for the mixed doubles Super Series, calling some games last year, and mixed doubles, like you said, Robbie, there's a bit of a chaos element to it. It is easy to put a big number on the board, one missed shot, and you can be in huge trouble in mixed doubles. And for all of the sort of randomness that sometimes creeps in mixed doubles, it is interesting that the best team finds a way to win in the big moment, because I'm sure for Curling Canada, going into mixed doubles trials, there's probably a little bit of you that's like a little scared based on who could win, of just like, oh, we're really going to have to work with this team to get them going for the Worlds and then maybe the Olympics in a year. Like, and that's, again, no shade to any of those teams, but it's just, there are some teams who are better than others. And I'm sure that they were a little nervous, but yeah, once it was the Peterman, Gallant and Homan Botcher final, I think, they were probably breathing a little bit easier that a couple of the top teams made the finals. And I think Jocelyn, to your point, mixed doubles seems to be the best that she plays. And it's not that she's not a good 4-person player, because obviously she is, but I think just having Brett sweeping and managing her rocks, and then also, I don't know, there's just some sort of thing she taps into, but she's a phenomenal mixed doubles player. And Canada, people may not know this, Canada has never won a world mixed doubles championship. And Brett and Jocelyn have gotten the closest anyone ever has, winning the silver medal back in 2019, I believe it was. And so, they're primed. They're a team that can definitely compete for a medal at the Olympics. Hope they get the job done in Fredericton so they get the opportunity to do that. But fun week, and really happy for them. Two great ambassadors for the game, and I think the best team last week, and fully deserving of the Olympic spot.
Do you know I DJ'd their wedding?
No, Robbie, I didn't know.
I believe I played a role in this.
I believe you did as well.
I talked about how good their communication was, and that all comes back to marriage. And you know what? If I didn't play Twist and Shout at that exact time, or Brown Eyed Girl, or the Macarena, I just don't think the marriage would have taken off like
Macarena
it did.
Is very important for mixed doubles chemistry, from what I've heard. So great move, Robbie. I'm really proud of you.
Yeah, I'll tell you what though, and just one last thing about that, I think it's a good thing too for us down here in the East. Obviously, Brett lives in Chestermere, like you said, but we cheer for our own down here, sort of thing.
Yep.
And there's a lot of people who aren't too familiar with mixed doubles in this area, and I think seeing Brett on the world stage, and especially at the Olympic stage, I think it'll create a lot of interest. And hopefully translate into new curlers that maybe come out of that. So, congratulations to both of them. Cheering for you. Yeah, I'll have to chat about it on PEI.
They feel like that's all
no
people will be chatting about on PEI. No doubt about that. Okay, well, just before we get to Karlee Burgess, very quickly, the next slam is already upon us. Felt like when St. John's ended, after kind of having Nisku and St. John's almost back to back, it was like, oh gosh, we're taking 6 weeks off. But now we're here. The WFG Masters coming up next week in Guelph. And the obvious question, I think, Robbie, is Rachel Homan and Bruce Mowat, will they lose? Will they not win?
Well, I think it's theirs to lose. I think they're obviously the front runners on both sides. We're not going to talk about that because it's pointless. But I think there's going to have to be a team to step up on both sides and really elevate and get to that next level to beat them. So not to say they can't be beat, but they're certainly head and shoulders favorite. Now, a couple changes. The new blank rule coming into effect, so that could shake things up a little bit. I don't want to say it's an equalizer for weaker teams, but it's just a little curveball into the event, and that might prove to throw some teams off and just something like
just trying to figure out the strategy change potentially. Yeah, no, for sure. I agree.
Yep. And I think, perhaps some teams had some time off over the holidays to just kind of recharge their batteries. And maybe they took a look at what are these teams doing? What, the men's teams, what is Mowat doing that makes them so dominant? Well, make shots. but
at the end of the day, Robbie, that is all there is to curling. If you make all your shots, you usually win the game.
That's right. But I think some teams had downtime, and I'm sure they've evaluated it and took a look at, what they need to do better and maybe try to find a weak spot in the top team's games and home and Mowat. Good luck. But, time will tell. I think it's going to be a very competitive event. I think, for Canadian teams with the season of champions around the corner, they're really going to start to turn up, and the world championships, obviously, for those European teams representing their countries. And, it's an exciting time of year when all this happens. So it's going to be a great event. The rule change is going to be interesting. I know there's a lot of off ice things that are planned that could be pretty fun. So if you're in the Guelph area, you want to check that out at the Sleeman Center. I'm not going to say anything on here because I'm just going to milk this last week without getting bashed on Facebook. So, but charge your iPads.
Yeah, charge them up. Get them in wherever you do to charge them. I don't know. I couldn't think of a good. The first thing that came to my mind was the iPad carts we used to have when I was a teacher, where they'd have like 30 iPads in the cart and the kids would have to slot them in and then they would start automatically charging just by virtue of being in the cart. Get an iPad cart, throw your iPad in there, charge it up. I think Guelph is going to be it's going to be a great event, going to be fun to watch. We got John Epping in the field for the first time this season, Danielle Inglis back on the women's side. We also have Jordan McDonald, the young boys from Manitoba, making their slam debut. So it's going to be very exciting. You're going to want to check it out. If you're anywhere in the area, join us at the Sleeman Center. Tickets available at thegrandslamofcurling.com. And without any further ado, let's get to our chat with Karlee Burgess. All right, I am pleased to be joined by Karlee Burgess, my other Broom brother. My partner in crime had to attend to a family matter, so this is just a one-on-one interview with the newest member of Team Einarson, Karlee Burgess. Hi, Karlee.
Hi, I'm so excited to talk to you.
I'm so excited to have you on the show.
I'm excited to be on this for the first time.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I mean, we're only like 8 episodes in, so it's not like you're making, like, you've made the top 10 first guests on the show.
Wow. Special.
So, hey, you are very special. There's no doubt about that. Well, Karlee, before we get into it, of course, we start every interview with the top 4. I'm going to ask you 4 questions. You're just going to give me the first answer that pops into your head, okay?
Okay.
All right. Who is someone you have never played with before that you would like to?
Rachel Holman.
If you know that all the rocks are good, both sets are great, what color are you picking?
Red.
What's your favorite place you've ever curled that's not your hometown?
Norway.
Okay, nice. And how would your bitterest rival describe you?
Intense, I guess.
Maybe you'll have a better answer to that question in a few weeks.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Well, Karlee, obviously having you on the show, not just because you are, of course, one of the best curlers in the country, but also some big news coming down that you're switching sides. You're going to be playing with Team Einarson starting next week at the WFG Masters in Guelph and for the rest of this season. And, I know obviously there was a little bit of this kind of alluded to in the Team Einarson press release, but maybe just for the fans who don't know, can you walk us through the whole situation? What happened? It seemed like Cari reached out to you. When did that happen? Kind of walk us through.
Yeah.
You get reached out to, you make the decision. Tell us all about that.
Yeah. No, it kind of happened about, I get a phone call or a text message from Cari about I want to say 3 weeks ago now, maybe even a little bit more than that. And just kind of like informing me on that Shannon will no longer be playing, and they kind of want just like a permanent replacement for the end of the season, because I know like it's playing with spares and it's a lot, and I think they just want to feel like they're a full unit for the rest of the season. So we had a couple of conversations back and forth and just kind of figured out what my role is, what happens to me next year, all the logistics around it if I was to join that team. And then I guess it kind of trickled. I talked to Lauren and had a conversation with her, and then I had a conversation with Chelsea and Emily, and just kind of telling the truth and like how I felt, and explaining that I basically think it was a great opportunity to play with Chelsea, and obviously our season wasn't the best season that we probably could have had or that we thought we would have had. And then given this opportunity to play with Carey, and I've always kind of wanted to play with Carey and Val, and I know Kristen being on the team this year, but I know like she's always been on my radar. And then I've had a conversation with my partner Jacques, and like we'd kind of discussing like where he's at, whereas I'm at, and like who we want to play with in the long term. And Carey was always my number one. That first question you asked, I would have said Carey, but I've actually had the opportunity to practice with her, so I feel like I've played with her. I feel like so Carey's always been like on my list, always like number one on my list I want to play with. So when I got that call, it was obviously hard to kind of come to the decision. It took me a couple weeks because I knew I was letting down some of my teammates, and knowing that they might not have complete the season. I don't know where the team is at right now, but I just like, for some reason, I feel like I'm a pretty loyal player, and this just kind of like changes everything. And I don't like the shifting in the middle of the season, but when I'm giving an opportunity where I get to play with one of the best skips in the world and one of the top players that I want to play with in my curling career, I feel like it was an opportunity I couldn't pass up. And so I had a hard couple conversations with the team and Glenn, and ultimately I made the decision to part ways and join Carey, and we've had a couple practices and it feels pretty good, and I'm excited. And so it was a hard couple days, and I try to stay off social media as much as I can, because I know some of those comments can be quite harsh, and I think there was some positivity around it too, but I know for myself, this is what I kind of just want to be. I was selfish in the moment, and I think I'm doing the right thing for my career and my curling career. So, yeah.
Was it something that you had ever kind of like talked to Carey about before, or even joked around about? Because I know for me, in the past, if there were people that were on my list, I like to plant little seeds here and there, like, hey, if you're ever looking for a player or whatever. Had you ever had any conversations like that with Carey before?
Actually, no. I knew they were such a great team and a solid unit, and I just kind of didn't think there was a lot of shifting in their team until this year, when unfortunately Shannon has an injury. And so no, we had no communication before. So I think that's even like, it's special, like the fact that she still reached, like we didn't really have any conversation before, like we were just players. We obviously like had some comments on the ice, like nice shot, or she would call me Karlee or whatever, like just communication, but nothing to this extent. And I think it's pretty cool that she sees a lot in me, and whether she knows me or not, like she trusts that I can join the team and be a good part of the crew. So I was so tell me a little bit about Carey, because you're saying she's one of the players that was near the top of your list, or at the top of your list, as someone you had identified that you wanted to play with. What about Carey intrigued you? What about playing with her kind of got you excited? Her intensity and like her drive, like as soon as she steps on the ice, like she is so one of the most determined players when she's out there. And like I like that aspect in her, and I feel like that is a lot of what I have. And like every time I go on the ice, like I want to win, and you can just like see it in her. And she would do everything and anything to like put everything on the line. And I know how much like this sport means to her, and it is means so much to me, as in like this is my life and this is where I want to go for the rest of my life. And I think she's also a great leader. And she's obviously an amazing curler, and she's been there, done that. And I've played against her for multiple different occasions. And I just see a lot of her in myself, which is really cool. And I think playing with someone that like you look up to and that has the similar qualities as myself, I think is like pretty special and a cool opportunity to learn from her.
Did she say to you what she was excited about in you as a player? Like, was that something that was discussed when you got that call?
Not really, but we've kind of just been talking about like my energy to the team, because I know it's been such a hard year for them, and like wishy-washy with like players and spares and all the things that they've had to deal with. And I think they just want like a new fresh energy, excitement. And like I do have a lot of energy, whether you know that or not, but like
I know that.
So I think they just wanted some like positive energy. And I think that was probably the main thing that they touched on. But yeah, they just need like some good vibes coming in, and I think that I can bring that, because I have a lot of energy.
Hey, yeah, I mean, I think that's great. I just, I'm always that kind of stuff always is curious to me, because I think, obviously we know with curling, like talent is one thing and shot making is one thing, and that's obvious, who's good and who's maybe not good. But I think the fans know this a little bit, but it is so much more about the mix as well, that it's not just, oh, Karlee's a great player and I want her to be on my team because she's great. It's usually something beyond that too. Do you know, were you Carey's first call?
I don't know. I never asked that. I think so, because obviously it's such a short time zone, or a time frame. They called me about, I want to say like 3 weeks ago. And at that time, we really didn't have a lot of time to figure out a player, because Guelph is next week, obviously. And then they need to get comfortable with the player and then go to Scotty's. So I think so. Like there was no one else they were kind of waiting for. They were basically just waiting for myself to make the decision. But I imagine maybe they reached out to Dawn. Like they had a really good time with Dawn and Joe. I'm not sure, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Okay. I was just curious. It was not, I'm not trying to dig up any, I'm not trying to already sow seeds of discontent. I'm just curious. Now, you talk a lot about kind of moving away from the Team Carey situation. What was it about the team this year that you think wasn't quite working, right? Because I think that's something fans can understand, is that, you're leaving for Team Einarson because, or at least partly because, things weren't working on Team Carey. What do you think it was that just wasn't quite meshing this year?
That's a great question. I've had a couple people ask me that, and I honestly can't pinpoint where I felt like we struggled. One thing that comes to mind is Emily was focusing a little bit more on school and work, and she couldn't take the time off that we needed kind of to play a full season. So we had to dial back the amount of events we played, which is okay and give us lots of time to train. But I think like the more reps, the more games we can play. And I think like mentally it's hard when you're sitting at home and you're knowing that there's a big event going on and all the people above you or below you and the world curling points are playing and they're passing you. And then it's like mentally hard that next time you go to a spiel, you're like, we have to do well. We have to qualify. So I think mentally it was really hard for all of us. Just knowing that chasing points is so important. And unfortunately, like we just didn't qualify in enough events, and weren't able to qualify for the Guelph Slam because we didn't have enough points for this year. And I don't know. I think playing with 3 and having a couple spares and not having really a consistent year was challenging. Yeah, and it was I think almost going into it, we had a great 2 events with Chelsea last year when she spared for us and Jen was away playing mixed doubles. And I think that kind of, not saying we hoped to do as well, but like in our head, we were like, okay, we were great last year. We can do the same thing. And it just didn't start that way. And it kind of just trickled down. And then it got frustrating and chasing points. And every other thing was like, it is so hard. And it's like mentally draining. You're on the road all the time trying to chase points. So I think it was a mental thing. I love playing with Chelsea. I love playing with Lauren. And I think Emily and I like have played so many years together, and like it's all been really good as teammates. It was just a grind of a year.
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure.
Yeah.
You talked about, I thought it was interesting earlier when I asked you about how this all kind of came down. You talked about calling Lauren first, and that makes sense. You've been teammates with her for a long time, and it feels like there's a tight bond. You got the Atlantic Canada bond there.
Mm-hmm.
When you called her, was it a like, I'm doing this, or was it a, I'm talking through this with you and I'll make a decision later?
The first kind of conversation I had with her was basically, this is because Lauren and I are not only like teammates for a long time. Like I respect Lauren as a teammate, but also as like a friend. And we're like in Manitoba together. We moved across the country. And so we've actually built a pretty close bond. So when I first called her, I was like, I need to tell Lauren, like, this is news that we've had such a stressful year that I was like, I need to tell Lauren this and tell her everything that I want her to understand where I'm coming from. And it was just basically, this is what I've been offered. I haven't taken it. I wanted to figure it out. But like long term, what do we want? What do you want? What do I want? Like if we think this team can go to the trials, then like let's go after it. But actually Emily wasn't going to be on the team next year because she was going into her Masters. So it would be Chelsea, Lauren, and I, which means we wouldn't have our trial spot. And we'd have to play pre-trials if we were to get in. So we kind of had the conversation about long-term, like what is our next quad going to look like? What is next year going to look like? So we just had a very open conversation about this opportunity, some other opportunities in the future, and what we actually want. We both really need and want to play the trials. So putting our own selves in the best spot to play the trials. And basically that conversation was an open-end conversation about where we are. And I did not make my decision then, and I did not make my decision for another couple weeks. So yeah, we were kind of back and forth, and then it was a lot of me chatting with my partner, like Jacques, and my mom and my dad and my family, and figuring it out. But yeah, that first phone call was not a decision. I just wanted to tell her what I've been given.
Yeah, I figured like I would do a similar thing. I had a close bond with my teammates. I played with 3 guys for a decade, and I felt like that's how it would have gone for me too. So that's great to hear that it was more of a, at least on some level, a bit of a collaborative effort.
Yeah.
And I think, you saying that the trial spot was going to be gone anyway, maybe put some things in perspective for the fans who were maybe a little surprised. I think we think of teams being formed strictly to make the trials,
Mm-hmm.
and you had a trial spot. So I think, knowing that you were maybe going to lose that anyway, I think, shine some light on that. And I want to ask you, you brought up Jacques a few times, and this was something that absolutely, because I'm a curling freak and I think about these things all the time. And obviously Jacques was on the other side of this earlier this year, where he was cut from Team Carey and obviously had to deal with the emotions of that. And you didn't do exactly the same thing, but
Mm-hmm.
you did leave some people in the lurch. talk to me about that. Like, like, what was Jacques kind of saying to you in terms of, he had just kind of gone through the emotions of being on the other side of it. Like, what were those conversations like?
The biggest thing for him mentioning to me is like, we kind of just put it like, we kind of separated like pros, cons, this, that, like, what do I want? And I think it came down to like my list that we went back to. We always talk about like who we want to play with, like who's our dream. And Carey was always up there and always has been. And I think like we kind of just like trickled down that effect. Like you have to be selfish for yourself. But when it comes to his past with Kui, his number one thing was, he said, you just need to make sure they're aware. You need to be open and honest and let them have their own opinions. Like they might come back and have a couple comments, and you just need to be completely yourself and open. So we didn't really talk a lot about like his past on how he was kicked off, I guess, but I think his biggest thing is he just wanted me to be open and honest with the team. And at the end of the day, it's a business. So he gets it, and he understands why he understands that it is a business, and he was off the team and they didn't have a great year. That's fine. But moving forward, he was just wanted me to be like respectful, kind, open, like all those things for my team, and not leave them with you know what I mean?
I do. Yeah, no,
yeah.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
I feel like I can just ramble on and on and on. Sorry. So, yeah.
Well, I am interviewing you. So technically that is kind of your job, is you're actually allowed to ramble on as much as you want, whether you know that or not. So don't worry about it. I'm just sitting here, I'm fascinated. I think we really haven't seen anything like this in curling history in terms of the timing of it. Right. And so, and just, the parallel with Jacques, I did think was kind of interesting, because I've talked to them a little bit, and I know that was hard for him, the whole Kui situation. And so, I just, that was just an interesting parallel for me. That's all.
And I like, after this year, like what he's been through, and now like what I'm dealing with, I honestly, like, I'm so grateful for our relationship and like our support system. Like, it's so easy to go and talk to him because he knows it all. Like, he understands, like, someone in the whole curling world. It's so easy to have like him support me and know that we can have an open conversation about this. And when he was going through a hard time, like, I was there to support him because I understood it. So like, it's been really good to have him help me through this, because obviously I was pretty emotional making those phone calls, and not something I liked to do or wanted to do. But when I was given an opportunity, he was obviously there supporting me with what I wanted and I thought. And
Are you nervous that this is only for the rest of the season?
Yes and no. It's kind of like, I think to finish off the year and like maybe have the opportunity to win Scotties, and I think you never know what happens after that. I don't know what happens after that. But honestly, just to play with these players, because the quad is just over a year out, like, so it opens the door to like what other players I might want to play with in next quad. And for next year, I'm just kind of going with the flow for now. And then I'm sure there'll be lots of phone calls and lots of chatter over the summer, and hopefully people value or see value in me as a player and a teammate. And hopefully I find something, whether if this works out or not for the following year, I don't know. So I'm not nervous right now, but I'm sure in a couple months. But right now I'm just kind of excited for the opportunity to play a couple more really big events with these girls. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Were you worried also, speaking of being a little nervous, like we said, this has kind of never been done before. Were you worried that this might also affect how you are seen by other teams? That this was a pretty like critical decision that you made that affected a couple other players. Mm-hmm. Were you ever nervous that teams next year might be like, oh, well, we saw what happened last year? Did that ever cross your mind?
Not really, because this year has been so crazy with mix-ups. What's another one? Like, so not really. And I think everyone that knows is that at the high level and wants to like win the trials or win the Scotties kind of understands that it is a business. And I've been given an opportunity to play with one of the top teams in the world and in Canada. And I think for most of it, a lot of it would make sense to some of the curlers, and I hope it would. But yeah, I didn't think about that. I kind of just more thought about what the 3 other girls would think. So that was where my head was at.
Yeah, for sure. And I think you're right. Like this, it's funny, you know, I think this quad has totally changed how we think about team construction. You know, I think every quad roughly since, I think we'd say probably 2010, you know, it has been, we make our team the year after the Olympics. That's just our team. And I think this quad has really proven that that's maybe a faulty model for building a team. Is that something that you are thinking as well? Like, is this, I guess my question is this going to change how you think about team construction going into the next quad based on not just yourself, but also what you've kind of seen around the curling world?
Yep. Like, I honestly, as like I started to play women's more, I thought it was like, okay, for the quad, the first 2 years, you kind of stick together. And then if you make that decision after the second year, then that makes sense. You have 2 years before the trials. But like, we're less than a year out and everyone's making people are making switches. So like next quad, yes. And how does one feel secure? Like, I don't understand. Like, I
think is the answer. You don't.
Yeah. And I feel like my teammates are my friends and I value my friendship. So it's like, how do I know that it's hard to trust or respect everyone, that they're not talking behind each other's back and finding a new player if I play bad in an event? Like, who knows? Yeah. So I think it makes it very uncomfortable. But yeah, I don't know. Like, are we going to have to sign more contracts with Curling Canada with sponsors? Like, who knows? I don't know.
Well, I mean, a follow-up question to that, which I had written down here as well, and I think this is a perfect time to bring it up. Would you like to see these decisions be taken out of your hands a little bit as players? Because with other federations, they say you're in the program or you're out of the program. Here's who you're playing with. Here's who you're not playing with. Now that you've gone through this experience, and obviously, you know, it's still very fresh and you haven't even had a chance to play a game with Team Einarson yet, but you know, is that something you would maybe like to see in the future, where these tough decisions don't necessarily have to be made by you?
Yes and no. Like, I think curling in Canada, there's so many athletes. So like the idea of like making a couple of like 3 special teams of like, this is your team, I don't think is the way it needs to go with Canada. But I also think someone should regulate like who goes where kind of thing. Like, I don't think it should be the players kind of just like calling here, calling there, who wants to play. Like, I wish there was like almost like a general manager for a team. You know what I mean? But yeah, like, it's a lot of extra stress on the player. Like, I'm going to have to play the rest of the season, and then I'm going to have to be my biggest advocate for myself to see what's next season. It's stressful. Like, I wish I could kind of just play and then I'd be given an like, I don't know how that would work, but
well, if all the teams had GMs, right?
Like, there's no certainty as an athlete, as a curler. And like, I wish we followed contracts a little bit more. Where like, you sign on to an NHL team for a couple years and like, this is your contract. I don't know how it should go, but it is a lot of phone calls and advocating for yourself as a curler, and it's mentally, and it's stressful. Like, yeah. So I don't know. And I'm still so young in this sport that I don't know. People above me, like older than me, have been there and probably have more opinions on it, but this is like my first real cycle in women's. I'm 26, so I just aged out like 5 years ago. So I'm still like fresh in all of this. And
yeah, but I think your opinion matters because you are a part of the next group that's coming up, you know.
That's true.
I think we are going to see maybe more on the men's side than the women's side, but we are going to see players retiring and leaving the game from this country, you know, in a big clump in the next, if not the next cycle, the cycle after that. And in theory, you'll be playing both of those cycles and the one after that. So I think you're actually uniquely positioned. I think your opinion matters maybe more than anyone else's. And so, yeah, I guess that is why I do think your opinion on this is important, because it has been working in Canada for so long, and we don't have to get into a whole rules thing, but it was just, you know, I just thought, like you said, it adds a lot of stress onto you, the player, when really you ultimately just want to go out and play.
Yeah. So like if not each team, but if you had like a manager to like kind of be like, okay, who do you want to play? Like, I don't know, like what kind of person do you want to play with? What position are you looking to play? Like who, I don't know. Like I think Curling Canada overseeing it isn't a bad thing, but there's also so many teams. How do you just decide which teams you're going to help out and advocate for versus not? But I would love if I didn't have to deal with it, but it's my life, so I have to.
Yeah, here we are. Yeah, we have no choice.
Yeah.
I want to go back a little bit, and I only have a few more questions left, but I did want to ask you about Jennifer Jones, because, you know, we think about making teams for a quad. When that team came together in the beginning, the 5-person team, the first year out of the quad, did you talk with Jen about it being a quad thing, or was it always like a year-to-year thing just based on her age and kind of how much she's done in the game?
It was kind of more or less like she kind of just mentioned like 2 years, like kind of how see how 2 years goes and then see how we are. But honestly, I think her life just kind of changed, and the girls are getting older, and some things came into her life that like just made it so hard and so busy, and she just didn't want to be away from the girls as much as she was. Because we had a pretty successful 2 years.
Yeah,
but
big time.
But at the end of the day, I think it really came down to like her life and where she wanted to be at in her age. Like in her age, she wanted to be home for the girls, and I think she was finding it hard, and her mom is getting older, and it was just a lot to ask for her relatives. So, yeah, like I don't think she was like, I think when she first called us, I don't think she was ready to quit. Like it was pretty emotional for her too, but she did what was best for her family at the time, and obviously she's happy in a good place now, but it was never a 4-year commitment.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And what was it like being around for the retirement party last year, the Scotties, the last slam?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you talk about being a new kid on the block. What was it like kind of having a front row seat to all of that?
Like it was like a pinch me moment. I'm like, why, like how I've been so lucky to be given the opportunity to play with Jennifer on her last 2 years, not only like in her last year of curling, and she is the best in the sport in the women's, and I get to experience her last goodbyes, her last game, her last rock, and get to be a part of the people that like supported her and been there with her through her whole career and the last couple of years especially. So it was really fun, and yeah, it's something I'll remember forever. Like I feel so grateful to be able to have done that with her. And yeah, it was a hard goodbye, but I know she's in a good place, and I know she's enjoying spending time with Brent and the kids. So
great. Now I did want to last kind of thing about the past, because I, curious about this as well, where you've ended up. You talk about team lineup shifting, and I think one thing that's been sort of interesting in this quad for you is that you've had a different team every year. The first year you had the 5-person team, then Mackenzie quit, then you had a 4-person team, then Jen retired, then you brought on Chelsea, then Emily wasn't playing that much, and you had all these spares. I know, but like,
I know.
Were you surprised that that's the way it went? Like, were you surprised that Mackenzie quit? Were you surprised that that's kind of how the quad shaped out?
Yeah. 100%. When Jen originally called me a couple years ago, she was kind of seeing what I was doing and who I was playing with, or what my thing, like what the next steps were for me. And honestly, the girls and I still decided that we were going to play the next year together. Like Mackenzie, Emily, Lauren, and I, as a foursome. So I honestly pitched it to Jen. I was like, would you be interested in coming on our team and doing like a four-person team? And then honestly, I thought Mackenzie, Emily, Lauren, and I were a really good up and coming team. And I was hoping that like we could kind of like build as a 4 together and see where that would take us. Like, I think all those years together, so young in the sport, have the opportunity to play right out of women, or like right out of juniors, and like build as a women's team. I thought that's where I was going. That's what I had in my head, because I saw a lot of potential in all of us together. And then when Jen came on, I was like, great, this is a really good learning thing for Mac as a skip. She can learn from the best. All of us can learn in some way, in some capacity, as a curler, as an athlete, as a teammate, from Jen, because she's been there, done that. And I thought we'd grow into that together. Unfortunately, Mac stepped away. And then as things progress, Emily wanted to focus on school, which is, I understand. And here we are. Yeah. So no, I had no idea this was the way it was going to go. And to tell me, if you were to tell me like 3 years ago that I would play with Jennifer Jones, and then a couple years later I'd play with Chelsea Carey, and then I'd play with Cari Einarson, I'd be like, all right, I'll do it. Like, like, sold.
Teach me, please.
Yeah. And if I have to change all those teams, and so be it. But if I get to learn and play with some of the best people in the sport, I'm happy. It's a gift to be able to play with all those great curlers. So no, it's not how I saw it, but at the end of the day, I'm very grateful for these opportunities that I've been given, and to continue on building in my career and who I am. So yeah.
All right. Last question. I heard that a couple days ago you almost burned the house down. You want to tell me about that?
Oh my gosh. How did you hear about that?
I hear about everything.
That is crazy. Yeah, I did. We ordered Thai food, and I put the bag in because we were busy doing a couple things around the house, and then I decided to just put the oven on warm, and I put the Thai food in the paper bag in the oven. And I went downstairs changing the laundry. I was like busy, and then I had heard some screaming from Jacques upstairs that the bag was on fire. So yeah.
Yeah, you're not supposed to put paper in the oven. I think that's a kind of a good learning lesson. I'm surprised Jennifer Jones didn't teach you that.
Well, I put it on so low. I was like, it's not going to catch on fire. And then I walked away, and it did.
Did it ruin the food? Did you have to go get more food?
No, it was all good.
Wow, the paper bag did enough of a job, eh?
Yeah, it just was like the top little bit, so it was okay. Jacques caught it. It's fine.
Well, then you two do truly make a good pair. He can anticipate when you're about to burn the house down and take care of it.
Yeah, he was upstairs the whole time, so I'm glad he was there, because I walked away from it. So yeah.
I love it. Well, thank you, Karlee. So thrilled you agreed to talk to us. Good luck the rest of the way. And I mean, I'm going to see you in like a week, so excited for that.
Yeah.
I'm always there now.
Yeah.
So yeah, we'll see you in Guelph. Good luck the rest of the season. Thanks again for doing this.
No, awesome. I appreciate it. And yeah, thank you so much.
So there you have it. A fantastic interview with Karlee Burgess. Thanks to her for joining us here on the Broom Brothers. Sorry that my compatriot Robbie is not here to play a game with me at the end of the episode, but we thank you as always for listening. Of course, you can follow us on all socials at the Broom Brothers. If you want to see the video of this episode, we're on YouTube as well under the Broom Brothers. If you like the show, tell a friend, rate and review it, get the word out. We appreciate you listening. We'll be back here in a couple weeks recapping everything that happens at the WFG Masters and anything in the world of curling. It seems like anything is possible this season, and we will be right on top of it for you as always. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great couple weeks. We'll see you later.